Well, hey everybody! I guess we did a malfunction, and our little show intro didn't go
Yeah,
off.
I'm sitting here ready to pick my nose and scratch my head, and then
Oh,
like
it says
nothing happened.
can't play video clip. Contact support. Oh my God, this can be like the tabletop events of video things.
Yay!
How you doing, Rob?
Good. How are you? How are all of you doing?
Doing
Good.
great.
Tonight we have Rob Conley. He just got done doing a Kickstarter. Rob, you raised a little bit of money. You had what, a $2,000 goal, right?
Yes, I would have paid for the editing, and I would have had
Yep.
to. I have a fairly extensive. I wouldn't call it stock art because some of it's from the
Yeah.
Patreons I patron, but I accumulated it over 10 years of patronizing people and buying
Yeah.
stuff off a drive-through. But
Well,
no, I got 38, so that's
yes, well,
gonna.
well,
Beautiful.
yeah, well. Sadly, that is. I mean, it's kind of a big failure. I mean, you wanted $2,000, and you couldn't even get that. Instead, you had to get $38,000.
Fell upward, Rob. Fell upward.
$38,840 with 735 backers.
Yep.
Rob, you've heard it probably a million times in the last week, but congratulations. Very
Thank
serious when
you.
I say that.
Thank you. It's gratifying seeing so many people interested in my work.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're going to be talking about Rob's Kickstarter tonight. We're going to be going through some very interesting viewer mail. We have a couple of interesting questions in the viewer mail that we didn't talk about before the show that ask legitimate, pretty cool questions about what we do and why we do it. But Rob, real quick, give us what's your Kickstarter about? What's the details? And people can still give money to it, correct?
Right. It's still accepting late pledges. So what my Kickstarter is I originally got into this whole publishing stuff way back in the 2000. Yes, I started off by working with the Wilderlands, but with the Necromancer Games project. But I wanted to publish my setting stuff, and I was lucky in a way that because I built on top of the Wilderlands, which for those of you who don't know, the old school Wildland really had little and high level detail.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to basically make it on top. Whatever you could build, whatever world you want on top of all the maps that they have, and I kept building and kept building. So I had all this stuff, but then the internet comes along, and people are talking about how they're doing stuff, and I realized, hey, I could do this with my hobby time,
Mm-hmm.
but I just got to learn a few things. And so this Kickstarter is basically a culmination of, let's say, 20 years of work now of getting to the point where I can finally present one of my settings to everybody to enjoy and use. And one of the things I run sandbox campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that was always compelling from day one, even when I was a kid, um, about it was setting up the campaign and watching my players trash it in very interesting
Mm-hmm.
ways. Um, a lot of referees I knew back in the day get really bent out of shape when you
No, that's cool when they do that because they're
touch
playing
their
the game.
yeah you touch their king and no you can't do that and stuff. And I didn't care. It would be a challenge, mind you. It wasn't going to be a walkover, but no, if they managed to pull it off, they guess what? They get to now rule the kingdom with all the problems that entailed. So, and I kept building on that. And so when it came to actually publish the setting, sure, I had my ideas, I had my creativity that I poured into it. But first and foremost, I wanted to build it for people to use and leave room for their own stuff, which is why I adopted the hex crawl format of Judges Guild used and
Mm-hmm.
Traveler used, because despite all the detail those have, there's always hexes in between places the detail. It's never enough, so there's always room for people to add their own stuff and to take the paragraph I wrote and expand it to 3 pages for their actual session and make it their own. And
Now, real
yeah,
quick, have you ever done a Kickstarter before?
yes, I've done 2 other Kickstarters.
How were they as successful as this one, or in the
My
scheme of things?
first Kickstarter was for the make the basic rule of the Majestic Fantasy RPG, and that was 5 grand, which wasn't shabby. Not for what I needed done.
But I mean, let's face it. With this one, you had a $2,000 goal.
Right, and
You
that's
raised
I had an 800 goal. Sorry, I had 800 goal on the Majestic Fantasy RPG,
Mhm.
and I made $3,000, and then I did how to make a fantasy sandbox, which I knew was going to do better, just
I
because
have
it's
a real quick. I have a copy of that. That is very well done.
thank you. And for that, I needed a $700 goal again, mostly for editing, and I made 15,000 on it, and almost had 1,000 backers. I had 914, and so I had less backers this time around, but I was able to charge more because
Yeah.
it has maps and has a 200-page guidebook. While How to Make a Fantasy Sandbox was a 150-page book
Mhm.
thereabout. So
Now, so you pretty much, and I know I'm kind of being redundant because we know each other,
right,
but a lot of people watching probably don't know a lot about it. You primarily work within Greyhawk, correct?
no,
Or is or
I work in the Waterlands of High Fantasy by Judges Guild.
okay, because that's a question actually that a guy asked me about you because I think he was getting you mixed up with Joe Block.
Yeah, Joe Block is the Greyhawk guy. I would have
Yes.
loved to do. I don't know if I was 20 years younger and TSR just dropped Greyhawk on Drive Through RPG, um, I might have been all over it. I have
Hmm.
written Greyhawk stuff, um, but here's the thing. So I started out. My first serious campaign was a Greyhawk campaign,
Hmm.
but it has 30-mile hexes, and it
Hmm.
has 3 paragraphs for these hundreds of square miles of kingdoms and
Yeah.
forest and stuff. And I said, and I got sick of the howling emptiness of the 30-mile hex.
Yeah.
Like, apparently that caught on because I see that phrase get uh, bandied about Greyhawk every now and again.
Trendsetter, Rob. You know what I mean?
I do, and I have my moments. But then I go into the Dandelion, which was a game store in Meadville, where I grew up and I still live.
Hmm.
And on the turn wheel where they had all their RPG stuff, there was the Waterlands of High Fantasy. And I looked at it, and I'm pretty sure Traveler without I was aware of Traveler by then,
Hmm.
and I was looking like, oh my God, this is like Traveler for fantasy. This is what I need. I want to use this. And my friends were like, no, we don't want to do this. No, I swear. And I sweet talked them into it. And so I ported their character over from the Greyhawk campaign I was running into the Waterland, and we ran this whole realm, carve out their own realm, high level campaign. And they really, they really liked it.
Hmm.
And it was obvious I was having a more fun time with this because I could go to I didn't have to. I was 15 years old. I didn't know. I
Hmm.
didn't have the life experience I didn't have, and it gave the Judges Guild stuff gave me enough to build on.
Hmm.
And so, and then I found out about City State itself. So the next campaign after that was City State Invincible Overlord. But, and this is what crucial to why I kept going with it, is the stuff the players did on the previous campaign. It happened. I set the
Hmm.
campaign a year later, and it was in a different region, so it didn't really impact what the city state campaign. But the
Hmm.
players were tickled pink that their kingdoms and the towers that they built were still there, and I
So,
kept building on it. And
so basically, what you do and what you've done is you've taken player content, and as they build it, you implement that and you utilize that. Correct?
yes, yes,
Interesting.
and for this, because I can't use the Judges Guild IP. I well, I was lucky. Another stroke of luck is I couldn't use the Judges Guild IP in the late 2000s, and so I thought, how was I going to publish all this Majestic Waterlands, which is what I call my campaign, the Majestic Waterland? How was I
Hmm.
going to publish all that? Well, I came up with what I called Land of Adventure, really exciting title, and I started sketching out a setting, and I was going to do these letter size with a letter size map and about 16 to 20 pages per map setting.
Hmm.
And because the Waterland box set, as proud as I'm the work I'm done on that and all the work everybody else did, it was a $70. Well, it was a $70 product, which is a pretty big ask.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and then there was all the question, what is it good for? And so then I went to Goodman Games, and they said, sure, this sounds like a great idea for to publish. And it sold modestly well. They asked for a sequel. I did the sequel. It sold modestly well, but only modestly well. So they
Hmm.
said, okay, we're gonna stop it here. And they weren't mean about it. It just wasn't, selling
It's a
gangbusters.
business. You
Right,
know what I mean? It's
right.
either yeah.
But then I got a license to the Judges Guild IP.
Hmm.
So like hell, I don't have to make up my own settings. Still have my notes for it and all, but now I can take my old notes and use them directly, and then came out with Majestic Waterlands, and just
Oh,
then the only
sorry
thing
about
I
that.
had to learn after that was I found out I write slow, really slow. So I come out with a project every other year or so, and
Hmm.
uh, and then I got sidetracked on the whole Judges Guild Kickstarter. But then when all that all ended, lucky me, I had all those notes. So
Hmm.
and plus
Now,
I did Black Marsh.
now, I
So
got a question for you for people who have not supported you on it, who don't know what if they go to your Kickstarter and they back you, what do they get for their dollars?
they're going to get a 200-page guidebook, and the guidebook details um, 12, uh, four 12-inch by 18-inch map,
Hmm.
encompassing a total area about 300 miles by 400 miles, basically the size of France and England
Yeah.
put together ish. And and what they get, well, I can show them. What they'll get are four of these, and I'm showing you two of them.
Nice.
And as you can see, these are the referee maps,
All the hex scroll. Yeah.
and there's stuff in hexes, but not
Yep.
every hex has something. So there's room to put your own stuff. But
So real quick,
all of this together is sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt, but interesting point about your hexes. So if I understand right, all your hexes probably are numbered, correct?
Yes, all the hexes are numbered.
Okay. So empty hexes, like I could have hex number 8748 just as a number, and I can populate that hex to my own game, correct?
Exactly.
Excellent. Excellent.
Right. And more so, okay, so the content for all four maps is about 100, 100, I would say about 80,000 words.
Hmm.
And then, of course, there are kingdoms, there are cultures, there are religions, and I add travel rules.
Hmm.
And I explained a little bit about running what I call Living World Sandbox Campaign, my take on a sandbox campaign.
Hmm.
So combined, this is 125,000 words that you're paying for, plus 14 full color 12-inch by 18 maps.
Nice.
4 of them are the referee, 4 of them are player, 2 combined ones, which are slightly smaller,
Hmm.
okay? And then then the maps meet at a corner, which what's in the corner when the maps are all combined. Well, I give you 2 more maps, a player map and a referee map of the corner. So this is one corner, this is
That
one
is really
corner.
cool because that bottom map you're just showing that resembles heavily one of my maps for where a city called Darkholme is at. It's the largest city in my kingdom, in my world. So it's pretty cool that you did that because mine is kind of real similar in kind of scope. I'll show it to you after the video, but
Sure.
it's just I love maps. I think maps really make an RPG like some guys. I mean, not that I don't like women in chainmail bikinis, but I like maps.
Oh, I love maps too. Yeah, the
Yeah.
only sad thing about the thing was I was going to provide some 10 towns, but that was just That was just page count too far, word count too far. So that's going to be a separate project. Um, but I have work done on it already. No, it will happen.
Yeah.
But
John Miller says, per Rob's howling at the hex point, I was just editing notes for my Greyhawk campaign. I tried to fill in some of those hexes from Darlene's map, but it's a lot of work. Ended up making each, he goes on and says, each 30-mile hex a mini sandbox hex crawl at a scale of 2 miles per hex.
oh yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, I could do it now if I didn't put all this work into my own stuff. But
yeah.
But yeah, as a 12, 15-year-old, as a teenager trying to figure out what goes in those hexes, I needed help, and Judges Guild gave me that help.
Mm-hmm. John Miller goes on and says, the 30-mile hexes are too large in that they're likely to have dozens of settlements, layers, ruins, etc. in each hex. Plus, the 1983 Greyhawk box set didn't bother to detail any of the hexes. Excuse me.
Or the folio, which I have sitting right there.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that is, I think, Eric,
Yes.
Rob, Steve, do you guys believe that maybe they did that on purpose to kind of just give more openness? Do you think I've heard people talk about this before, and some people say that, they just didn't do it because they were too lazy or they didn't have content. Do you think it could have been on purpose, though, maybe? Just to kind of drive people to create?
I think the answer retroactively would be it was done on purpose. I think I don't think that was consciously at the time. I don't think they thought much of what content people would need. Remember, it's the same company that thought, why would we ever publish adventures? People want to make their own adventures, right? So, the idea that people would need more detail it wasn't even an omission. It just never occurred to them. So I think that's just something that retroactively they would say, oh yeah, that's
real quick. I have
can I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this was all new back then, and even though Empire of the Petal Throne came out, Greyhawk was written by Gygax, and it was the first setting product he ever did. And what did he do? He came up with a travel log. He decided he took inspiration from the folder books. You know what those are? The travel log book?
Yep.
That's the format he adopted. And you know what? I did that for my Majestic Waterland, because my Majestic Waterland, I intended it to be an overview, and the travelogue is good for an overview. So I think that's what Gygax in his mind. He wanted to write an overview of Greyhawk, and the best thing for an overview was a travelogue.
Well, Fugly asks a really interesting question. Maybe it's probably more in the purview of Rob, you, or Eric. And that is, Fugly says, I think the 30-mile hex was a random number that sounded okay at the time. Now, what do you guys think about the 30-mile rule? I mean, because let's face it, 10 miles is a nice even number. 20 miles is a nice even number.
Even 25. 25, it breaks down.
Or 12.5 of Harn.
Yeah, but 30 miles is a kind of weird. Do you think, like Fugly says, that was just some random number they just kind of maybe just theoretically pulled out of their ass, or do you think that was something that was deliberately planned?
I think it was, just something they did randomly.
I think it was they had a hex grid, and they laid it on top, and Gygax looked at the scale. Well, I guess it's 30 miles.
Right. I think, like Rob was saying, I think they had. Our world is X miles by X miles, just the size of it. And when the hex grid went on, the closest grid, breaking off to if it was a larger world, maybe you would have seen a 35-mile hex. But I think 30 it fit the world that was drawn out when they laid the hexes on top of it.
Well, John,
they got that. They probably got the hexes off of one of those dry transfer people.
Probably.
I have them up there. I don't have the hex ones, but
yeah,
they were all the rage at the time, and you could buy a sheet of hex paper, and they probably looked at the different size, said we like that size, laid it on top of the Greyhawk map, and said, well, I guess it's 30 miles.
Well, John Miller says Greyhawk was published after Judges Guild Waterlands. Waterland, excuse me. There's stuff about Greyhawk Folio and box set that is good, such as the encounter tables. And John goes on and says, the brief descriptions of geography and political realms in the Greyhawk box set is about the right level of detail, but they should have also included some more detail on parts of the world. But see, the thing is that's where people like you, Rob, come in. And I'm not saying I'm not talking about Greyhawk specifically. I'm talking about just in general. Gamers starting off and filling in those voids. And what you've done is you've taken your hobby, you've taken your passion for maps and that setting. And let's face it, I mean, I gotta tip the hat to you. I mean, for a $2,000 goal Kickstarter and you raise 38,000 grand, almost 39 grand now, and probably going to hit 40 before this is over with.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like and we're going to get into viewer mail here in a few minutes that this kind of touches, but this kind of shows that there is a distinctive interest in OSR, OSC type materials out there, I think, still.
Yeah,
Because I think even Watsy in some ways sees that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the $1 million Kickstarters of OSC and or Domanwood, I guess is the one that was $1 million, and in Shadow Dark, but between there's all kinds of just, I guess, middle tier guys like me who are, $38,000 is a nice chunk of change for anybody doing work in this hobby or industry, and and I know my work is distinct and people appreciate it, but I am not special in that regard. There are also other people with their own distinct creative vision doing work, and they are making the money too.
Yes, but don't take credit away from you when credit is due, because what you have done is, there are people that do what you do. Mm-hmm. And you're right about that. But I'm not saying this just because you're on the show. This is absolutely my opinion, Rob, and that is what you do though is you take it to that extra step. You don't, you give that more, that little bit extra, you get more into the detail of it. And I think that's the reason why you have the responses to your Kickstarters that you do, is because I'm willing to bet if you look at the 735 people who have supported your Kickstarter this time, and if you looked at the same Kickstarter that you did last time, you probably see a lot of the same names because people respect what you do and they like what you do.
Yeah, I got it wasn't over 50%, but it was a high number, like 25% of the backers of the last one backed me this time around.
Yeah.
So that was gratifying to see.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not trying to sell myself short, but I guess I'm more like trying to encourage people. You shouldn't. It's a lot of work. It's work, okay?
It is.
And if you want to keep your hobby, by all means doing that. But if you want to take it the extra mile, there's a path available, and you can do it within the time and budget you have available. And if you want to share work, it doesn't have to be. I did my basic rule for the Majestic Fantasy RPG on a $3,000 budget, and got it's only a level 1 through 5 RPG, but I got a complete RPG book out there, and it was nice to have that. And it's nice for me to use at my own table. So I had people fund the editing on that and fund the art. Now I have this nice book, for others to use and for me to use. And
so I would classify you with these successful Kickstarters underneath you. You're a successful publisher. You are. You have put out many products. You're well respected in the industry. What kind of advice would you give to some young creator or some old creator who just has an idea and they're like, you know what? I don't think my idea is worth a shit. What would you say to a person like that who says, what do you think I should do, Rob? What advice would you give them if they want to publish their product?
Listen to your audience. When I say that is, there's some bright lines in my creativity that where I cease to be interested creatively.
Mm-hmm.
But my majestic fantasy realm isn't a beautiful crystal waiting to be shown to the world. The kernel of it, I'm not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
That kernel, but there's a lot of things I'm flexible about. And one of the things I didn't have a draft, one of the reasons I didn't have a draft ready to go to share during the Kickstarter is because a fan of mine named, and I'm mispronouncing it because his handle really, Atornark,
Uh-huh.
and he went through my draft. I shared my draft because he's been supportive over the years. And here,
Mm-hmm.
you get a preview of it. He said, "Oh, Rob, you have blah blah blah," and before you know it, he gives me a multi-page document with all the misreferences, all the stuff my editor was going to handle. But he did it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, damn it, I'm going to have to. I can't. Okay, now that I know this, now I've seen it, I got to fix it. So I fixed it, and then
Mm-hmm.
but I got it done before the Kickstarter end. But that was a huge help.
Mm-hmm.
And but see, I didn't think my draft was perfect, so I was
Mm-hmm.
able to accept that constructive criticism and make it better. So I
Yes.
listen to people what they have to tell me, what they need, and there's some things I won't change, but there's some things. Okay, they want that part of it painted red. That's still my setting. That's still a Rob Conley work. If I paint it red instead of blue, fine, I'll paint it red.
We got.
So
Go ahead.
so that's what I would say. Be customer service oriented. Listen to your customer.
Yeah.
Know what your core is that you're not going to change, but beyond that, be flexible. That way
Yeah.
you'll learn about it. And especially when it comes to logistics, you know.
Yeah. Well, you got a question here, Rob, but let's get Tom in here real quick. Tom, welcome
Hey
to the
Tom.
show.
Hey.
So, Rob, Michael Stengel asked, Rob, how long have you been blogging? That must have built some base of people that follow you.
Yes. I've
Hold
been
on a minute.
blogging.
Hold
Sorry.
just a second. Rob, how long you been blogging? That must have built some base of people that that follow you. Sorry about that.
So I've been blogging since 2009, and yes,
Okay.
I absolutely that would be the second thing I recommend is you're going to have to establish a social media presence. If you want to be the one-man shop, well, you're not necessarily one man. But you're going to build a team every time you do a project. Work with other freelancers and stuff.
Yep.
If you're going to do that, then you're going to have to do your publicity, and
Well,
that's
and
the only downside of today's internet economy is it rewards people who can come on things like this chat
Mhm.
right here and
Right.
talk freely and not freeze up. Because there's some great authors out there who do not thrive with this camera in their face.
Yes, and I've learned the hard way that you need to bring people on, and that's what Wizard Tower Publishing's just done. Is we just got we're bringing on 2 editors, 2 layout specialists, because you have to be able to respond and grow to the. Hold on a minute. Tom is.
Is Tom having his internet issues?
He is not. Yeah, something's going on with him. Hold on a minute. But sorry, Rob. He'll be right back.
Sure.
I think you're right. I think what you have to be able to do is you have to be customer centric, but you also have to sit there, keep in mind that, and I will admit, one of the worst things that you can do is have a release date and miss it, and then miss it consistently. And that's been a hurdle I've had. And, there's been some recent things happening in my company's life where we're having to get layout specialists and editors because with things, some of the properties we're coming in possession of, like gangbusters and such, we're dealing with Mark Akers now and such. I feel your pain. I mean, you've got to be able to respond to this, You got 735 people itching, biting at the teeth to have your product. Now, real quick regarding that, are you in favor of having a product? Because I know Jim Kitchen, this is a big one with Jim Kitchen. Are you the type of creator that says, listen, before I'm going to start my Kickstarter, I want to have it done and ready to go, or at least done and doing the fine tuning? Because I know with Eric's show on Wednesday night, Jim Kitchen's famous for going, okay, here's the question, and what's your opinion on that? As far as, is it okay?
Well, when you're operating like me, have it I'm going to use the F word. You have it fucking done.
Yeah.
Whatever it is your skill set is,
yeah,
have it done. Mine is cartography and writing. So I will have the writing done and the cartography. Now, I got to say, the travel rules, I need to give another pass, but it was the first draft. So I had some people who are rule savvy checked out. They found some gaps. So I'm going to have to do that. But other than that, the setting part was done. And I knew it was done. But here's the thing that's where you and I probably are in different situations. Now you have a staff, and you have to, and I don't envy you this, and kudos if you're able to pull this off, or you are pulling it off, obviously, but you're gonna have to pay them on an ongoing basis. That means you're gonna have to hold to a release schedule. Me, I have the luxury of waiting until it's freaking done.
Yes, but see, I also, and Steve, the co-host up here, I've known Steve for almost 20 years, and I've ran a publishing company before, and it was big. We had 9 women that worked for me in the office. So I'm very careful. I know that you have to be able to back it up. You got to be able to, as I tell people is, I know that these people need to pay their electric bills and put, hamburger on the, helper on the stove, but, and don't be hating on Hamburger Helper. Anybody in here, nobody better be hating on fucking Hamburger Helper.
It turned out I found out I like ramen noodles. Go
Ramen
figure.
noodles are good. What? Come on, guys.
Especially the pork one.
Don't.
Delicious. Not every day, but
I like the spicy pork myself. But that's me. No, we're not going to get into discussing ramen noodles, people. Eric, you're quiet. What's up, Steve?
Nothing. Listen. This is. I'm giving Rob spotlight. I talk over Rob enough.
Rob, I'll tell you what. I really think that you give good advice as far as for people looking at you going, listen, I want to create, I want to do, and such. Dumb question for you. I'm going to ask some really stupid, silly questions, but it's the geek in me. I mean, me and Rob have a joint printer fetish. We like printers. Okay.
Yeah, sitting over there.
That's right. The 8550, right?
Yeah, that 85.
That's right. Sorry, guys. It's a kink. Get over it. At any rate, Rob, what kind of software do you use, or would you suggest to use for somebody just starting off that says, I want to make maps?
Inkscape.
Inkscape. Why?
Yeah. Well, it's a full feature illustration program, and you'll learn how to use layers, fills, strokes, point width.
Yep.
Now you could use Campaign Cartographer. You could use all these specialty Incarnate, I think it's one. You could use these, but if you want the full power, learn a program like Inkscape. And I'm suggesting starting out with Inkscape because it's good. It's not the best, but it's good because it is free.
It's free, yeah.
It's open source, and it's free, and it's competent, and it has everything you need. However, once you get a regular income flow, pay for that Adobe subscription. Yeah. Or my favorite is CorelDRAW.
Another blessing. Give this man a gold star. Everybody hates on me for Corel, and I tell people, if you do not like Corel and you're hating on Corel, you have not used it in 15 years.
Yeah, because I tried using Illustrator. Illustrator is weird. The only thing illustrated at MB is the freaking brushes. Man, the Harm people use the hell out of those
Well,
brushes.
2025 has brushes now.
Yeah, but did you do it like I read the sheet, and they're not like the Illustrator brush. In
They're
other
not
words,
like the Illustrator.
you can't draw a fence with it.
No, you can't. Yeah, true. But
That's what I want. I want to be able to let's use the quintessential example, railroad track. You can't draw a railroad track with those.
yes.
I want a brush in Corel that I can draw railroad tracks with.
Mm-hmm. Well, what for those watching this who are getting into graphic design work, but don't let the word Corel fool you though. I utilize Corel Draw more than I use InDesign, because what I like about Corel Draw is it, for the money versus for what you get, the graphic suite period is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm InDesign certified, and I still prefer Corel. It's just my thing. What's that?
For layout?
Yeah.
Huh.
Matter of fact, I just got them yesterday. I got my Adobe certifications for InDesign and Photoshop.
No, I meant you use Corel for layout?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'm an old PageMaker guy, and InDesign has enough PageMaker DNA that it still sings with me. I get the Creative Suite for two things: Adobe Acrobat and InDesign. And once you go beyond one application, you might as well get the Creative Suite.
Well, what's interesting about Adobe for those watching this, one nice thing about Adobe InDesign that is superior to anything in Corel is what's nice about Adobe InDesign. If you're going to be making a consistent product, you can basically you can make basically patterns, or you can make templates.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool about templates is if you're going to have like a whole suite of role-playing games and you want the same format and feel, you can make a master template. Or if you're going to make a consistent 8.5 by 11 hardcover manual, and you need to make sure that your bleeds and your gutter and your setbacks and all those are consistent, you can make templates. And that's the only bad thing about Corel, is you can make a template, but it's not like the same way with InDesign. So InDesign in some ways is more user friendly, but
but Corel for cartography, hands down, is the best.
Because Corel Draw is a vector-based, easily a vector-based program, and it's beautiful. I mean, especially 2025.
So
I'm
going to use that to give you guys a sneak peek.
Ooh.
Into something. So, by the way, I know people like those portfolios I was showing. I also found there's 11-inch by 17-inch binder. That's pretty handy.
Yes, there is. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. Ooh.
So
10 cars like, ooh, impressive.
The Poconos, there's a Hobby Lobby, about 30-minute drive from the house. Yep. Just saying.
So starting off with Corel,
yeah,
I found out that once I went up to 32 megs of RAM, I was able to do huge maps in Corel.
Yes,
and then
you got a lot of RAM.
So when it came to the Wildlands project, I was thinking, do I draw 18 individual maps as 18 different files? And how am I going to keep track of how they join together? Can I do it in one? Can I do it at full size, 300 DPI? Where the hex, I think it's 5/8 inch hexes, and I draw it at 5/8 hex scale, all at once. Turns out I can.
Yes, you can.
When I had 32 megs of RAM in my computer, so I drew that whole Wildland as one huge 5-foot by 8-foot map.
Yep.
So I transferred that principle to my Majestic Fantasy realm. Now I don't have it completely filled in, so don't get too excited, folks. But in it, I have a 14-foot wide by 8-foot high map, all gridded out for future expansion, aka the Third Imperium of Traveler style.
Mm-hmm.
And my project is these 4 squares right here.
Well, I will tell you from personal experience, Rob, and anyone else interested in Corel, I have 128 gig of RAM in my computer.
Ooh, you beat me by double.
when I was running 64 gig of RAM in my computer, I did a 14-foot wide map for a guy for his bar. And it was a 14-foot wide by 8-foot tall map, high resolution, 300 DPI. And now I admit, when I took that image and I converted it over to a PDF, my computer, it gave a few.
Wait a minute. You converted into a vector PDF?
Yeah.
Oh God, man. No,
That's what he wanted.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
No, I got lucky. I was able to do that for my Kickstarter. It did it no problem. So I went, whew, because I didn't, for the Waterland, it wasn't an easy task.
Yep.
But no, when I do it something that big, I export it as a 200 DPI JPEG.
Or PNG. PNG. Yeah. Fugly says, I use Photoshop on computer, but nothing beats the physical drawing board and a pencil. I like that also, but also what you can do is I have a large tablet here, drawing tablet that I utilize. And
me too. Or a smaller one.
Yeah,
I use this to draw coastlines and rivers.
But they do the same thing, and that's what's really cool about them is once you get into a tablet, get using it, it's fine. My wife is in here. Uh-oh. Blame Steve. Tina,
but I will still do this. Hold on. I still sometimes start off with the basics.
Yeah.
Hand drawn.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one of the rough sketch for one of my town maps, and this is all the further I'm going to go with it on paper. I scan this in, and then this gives me a useful guide to make the map in Corel.
And Roger says he needs the Don some more intro to Adobe Suite class. Roger, when Wizard Tower Publishing goes live, we're going to have an educational YouTube channel, and I'm going to actually show people how to use a Wacom tablet, also along with that, on how to use Adobe, InDesign, set up basic stuff. So we're going to get into that. Thaddeus, how you doing? Thaddeus says, I prefer XP Pen. What do you guys use? Thaddeus. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, this is a Wacom Bamboo. No, this is the one. I used to have a Bamboo.
Yep.
But
Thaddeus knows what this is. Thaddeus is a smart guy. This is the XP Pen also. Thaddeus, I use XP Pen.
So how come you like the bigger? I mean, I guess I don't do enough sketching.
The reason why I prefer it is because I actually draw it on the tablet.
Oh.
It actually shows it on the tablet, and what I see on the tablet's mirrored on my screen. And you can actually use the tablet wheel and your nib, and you can actually blow it up, and you can get into hyper detail and such. It's just a lot more flexible, I think.
Is that a tablet that's also a monitor?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But the difference is you can get what you would pay $1,000 for with Wacom, you can get for $400 with XP Pen.
Yes,
and it's just as good. So
I have another recommendation. Piece tech-wise, since we're being teching out, I got these. Oh gosh, they're great.
Yeah, that's what they have here. They use the same thing. They're awesome.
Oh yeah, I have that. I have that exact model.
Yeah, they're. So you have an XP Pen then?
Or a little. No, I just have the pad.
Okay.
My son was searching for Christmas gifts, and I said, "Get me one of these guys." And I got it, and I liked it so much, I needed more buttons, so I got more buttons.
Yeah. Well, let's. Eric has to leave here in about 15 minutes, and before we leave, I'm sure Eric is going to want to have some comments about some of our viewer mail.
Yes, please.
Wait a minute. I got to say, hey, Ray, he's an old college friend, and he was in my many of the campaigns during college together.
Yep. Well, Acro Ray, thank you for tuning into the channel tonight, and thanks for supporting Rob. Rob, I'm going to say something real quick before we get into viewer mail, and I'm not just saying this to kiss your ass in public here, but listen, you deserved every fucking penny that you got out of this Kickstarter. You do very good work, and you really give a shit about what you do, and that shows. And that's a really important part of publishing. And this is my advice to people is, publishing, if you're going to do it and have longevity in it, you've got to do it. Acro Ray says Star Trek BattleTech.
Yeah, and I got a story about
Okay,
him. Star
let me
Trek.
real quickly
Later,
read
for
Via
later,
Mail
but I
because
have one
he
more
has to
thing
leave.
before we segue. And this is something we didn't mention, is I am going to release a setting reference document for the Northern Marches. Not going to have the art.
Mhm.
The book is going to be, under traditional with all the art and the nice layout. That's going to be copyrighted. But I'm going to make a markdown document and an RTF of all the text that people can make it their own. It'll be released under Creative Commons.
Very cool.
Yay.
All right, viewer mail, ladies and gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
It was interesting this week. We're going to start off with Hector in Moraga, California. Hector says, as a Hispanic man, your coverage of Wonderfield's CEO, Stephen Deinhardt, was interesting. I wanted to say on the record, he does not speak for us true Hispanics. His hate, animus, and spite that he throws at others, and how he claims that he's being artsy, but then condemns others for the same thing, he does show how much of a cabron he is. Cabron? Cabron? What's cabron?
Cabron.
Cabron. What is it?
We'll just leave it as asshole.
Okay. So I take it he's not saying, okay. So he's saying that he's a cabron, and he says he's a real embarrassment to the Hispanic community. Keep outing these horrible people. Don't worry, that's what we do best here. Michelle from Berea, Kentucky said, I would like to hear your panel's thoughts on Wizards of the Coast handling of D&D and why so many older, mainly men, act almost, if not outright, insulted over the new editions of Dungeons & Dragons. Eric, would you like to...
We're talking about like D&D with safety rails and training wheels, right?
She's basically asking us why is mainly older men almost act like they're insulted about the new edition of D&D.
Because we like a challenge when we play. We like the idea that our characters may through our own fault, likely, or the luck of the dice, actually expire, not have to fail a roll like 10 times before it happens. I mean, I'm not saying that the core rules of 5e or D&D Forever aren't good rules. Just the way that they were implemented by their parent company is less than optimal, in my humble opinion. How's that?
And I'll have to add it like this. Michelle, I think part of the problem also is this. And all four of us are similar age. I'm 57. So, what happens is you grow up with something and you like it and you enjoy it and it's a major part of your upbringing. And you become attached to that style of play or that type of game. And then later on, when it is changed, some people react to it drastically. Some people react to it minorly. Some people just brush it off. But it does feel, it can feel a little personal. I think that's probably part of it.
So for me, when it comes to me playing, I like the role play.
Mm-hmm.
I always get into character. That's just my style.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to my campaigns, if somebody is into role playing, I'll certainly role play with them. But across 40 years, the amount of people who are want to be actors, acting out their characters' inner lives, it's a niche.
Yeah.
And the amount of people, just as the amount of people who are hardcore, kick down the door, smash things, kill things, that's a niche too. Most people are middle of the road. They're there to be with friends, to have an interesting adventure.
Yeah.
And they may have one or two things about their character, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
So what I had to learn, and from, and Ray, who on the channel caught me in my early years of that, I thought role playing was the pinnacle. But I quickly learned that Well, not everybody is interested in role playing.
Yeah.
Some people want just interesting adventure. But rather than thinking, hey, those people suck, I figured out what can I do to run campaign to accommodate both people. And I'm still working that out
Mhm.
even now, but I think I can. And I've
Yep.
done it. And, you know, but I think the problem with the current edition of D&D is they offer advice that I don't think is very good on interpersonal relationship within a
Yeah.
group, because I think game designers are best designing games, and that
Mhm.
if you really want to be a leader, with have good group, go to a leadership course,
Yeah.
go to places that teach you
Yeah.
how to deal with small groups,
Well,
because they will have far better advice. The stuff I learned to the leadership courses at scouting and
yeah.
volunteer organization has served in good stead than any advice I got in role playing beyond the perfunctory, hey, be aware,
Yeah.
be kind to each other. You should have that in your book.
Well,
And
they're
also, the latest edition compared to the 24 edition seemed overly rigid on the rules.
yeah.
The rules are far more set, like feats are mandatory, multi-classes are
Yeah.
mandatory. Well, Mike Merle and his team were far more flexible about designing the 24 version of
Mhm.
D&D to accommodate different play style. So I'm a bit down on the 2024 version,
Yeah.
not because they show
Well,
orcs in a desert setting wearing a certain kind of hat, but no, because they seem to make the game more rigid, and that's the wrong way to go.
well, the nice thing about it is never know. WotC may lighten up one day and maybe do something different. We don't know. But there's two emails that are interesting because they kind of ask the same question regarding Michael Hovermail of new
Ooh,
TSR. Leland from Corpus Christi, Texas, he says, you last week failed to explain how you know that Deinhardt, aka Professor Disco, kept the user information and passwords from TSR that was being ran by Hovermail as the PR representative. I'll answer that very distinctly, and then we'll get into the email from Michael from Oregon. Um, I know that because I was in on the meeting with Lanasa and Hovermail, and they were angry because they claimed Deinhardt kept the passwords. It's on video. I got the video recording.
right.
But Michael from None of Your Business, Oregon, says this. Your attacks on certain staffers from new TSR who were in fact the real heroes of getting that place shut down is shameful. Blaming the PR guy, as you call him, is bullshit. Fueled by petty anger and jealousy. The PR guy was the victim in all this. Deinhardt held hostage the username and passwords from all the social media accounts, yet you demonize the PR guy and Justin. Your own comments and Deinhardt's own admissions show both Justin and Michael K. Hovermail were victims of lies and conspiracies to ruin new TSR. Shame on you all.
Shame, shame, shame,
Shame.
shame on you.
Ding. I will just say it like this. I am more than happy to go on a vlog of many things and discuss this with the parties involved if they would like. And we could play our video meetings. I admit, I used to think Eric Tenkar was Satan incarnate. I admit that.
I apologize for that.
Oh,
I
I
didn't
missed
meet
that phase.
expectations. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I admit, I used to think Eric was a bad guy until something weird happened. And this is a lesson for everybody. Me and Eric actually talked one day.
Yes.
It was weird. I found out that Eric was not a bad guy at all. And Eric found out I was this really good looking bald guy from Michigan. No? Okay.
No.
You know
All
what's
right.
the worst thing that can happen when I play first-person shooter? When the guy starts talking to me. Now I have to think of him as a person.
Yeah, I know. Now
So that was the right move to make between you two.
Now, we have an interesting email, and I want to read this before Eric has to go.
All right, it's gonna be interesting. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Okay, this person goes by the name the Professor. He comes from Internet
What?
Fuck You.
All right, wait. One F or two Fs in the professor. One S or two S. I just want to know.
Two F's, one S.
Okay.
This is what he says, or she says. We don't know. It's Professor from Internet Fuck You. Attacking a Native American creator using race to attack him, and you all being Trumpsy's Fourth Rikers, show what pieces of trash you all are. Do a show on the new SS that you are all members of. White males, one and all, no empathy, hiding behind your white men's club membership. You all are jealous that a Native American, you all are jealous that a native true American is more talented, more enlightened, and more successful than all of you combined. Oh, and I have a copy of Blades and Arcana. It sucks. The rules do not work. The art is typical white guy, glory hole, OSR, Nazi garbage. Boy, that's a sentence.
Not Nazi. There was
Hold on, I'll read this again.
Political
Hold
in
on.
there.
Oh, and I have a copy. Blades and Arcana sucks. The rules do not work.
All right.
The art is typical white glory hole OSR Nazi garbage. And of course, race is a massive part of the game, which a game it is not.
Well, first off, let me just say this. I gave Giant Lands a true attempt at generating characters, and let me just say this: a game, it is not. All right, you can find it on my channel. Number 2, this is my real hair. It's not a wig. It's not taped to a hat. Okay,
And it's clean.
and it's clean. I clean on a daily basis. So
I wash my hair daily too.
What hair?
Thank you,
my
Steve.
fantasy.
I wasn't going to go there. You know what it is, and you react in that manner when the truth hurts. You strike out when people pointed out inconsistencies with the historical record that was being presented. I'm trying to make this very
Eric, they're
polite.
called screenshots of his actual Twitter and social media, sort of like Dave Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, personally, I think the individual in question may be going through some rough times.
Eric, real quick, I know you have to go. I have a question for you regarding Giant Lands because you and I believe Bad Mike and one or two other people.
Skeeter.
Okay,
Bad Mike and Skeeter.
You guys attempted to create a character, correct?
We tried to do Session 0 online,
and you could not even create a character if I remember.
We couldn't. And listen, I am not a huge game designer. I am not Mr. Rob Conley. I am not Greg Christopher. I am not Don. However, okay, if you have statistics and if your strength gives bonuses in +1, +2, +3, but your dexterity gives bonuses in +5, +10, +15, but you can't even find where the bonuses are being applied to. But they aren't being consistent in how these bonuses are being created. You pick. Are you going percentiles? Are you going D20? Are you using an incremental? Make up your mind. I personally believe, and I have no evidence for this other than knowing Jim Ward as well as I do for his creative part, is Jim had a slush cabinet. He had drawers full of material that he's written over the years that was unpublished. And if you asked him to create something, his first reaction was to go see, what do I have that I can work with so I don't have to start from the beginning? What kind of fits it? And I got a feeling Jim Ward reached into multiple slush piles and brought out stuff that he thought would work with Giant Lands.
But what is interesting about Jim Ward, real quick, is I found one of Jim Ward's posts from 2021, it was November of 2021, where he addresses his relationship with being the game designer for Giant Lands. And he says in his post on social media that he wanted to clarify for the record that, in fact, he is just basically giving technical advice, and it is Deinhardt that is doing the majority of the writing. And I think what happened here is Deinhardt jumped on name dropping. And instead of realizing that it doesn't matter who helped you design the game, that's only going to go so far. You have to have a quality game product, because people will buy it, and then people like vloggers, Eric Tenkar, whose vlog is dedicated to doing just what he does, will play test that game. They will report on that game. And if the game is great, the vlogger's going to say it's great. If it's shit, the vlogger's going to say it's shit. But the difference between you, Eric, and a lot of vloggers who say things are shit, you show the receipts.
Oh, we did it live. And listen, I'll be honest with you. When I did my first read through of the rules, I did a lot of head scratching. I was a little confused, and I told Mike and I told Skeeter, I go, listen, this is going to be interesting because I'm not quite sure how this is going to work because I don't see how it works.
Yeah.
And as a side note, I don't encourage my players to wear masks in private, in public. They can do what they want in their bedroom, but at the game table, I don't expect masks to be worn. I am not going to wear one.
Yeah.
But if you want us to, put them in a box. That's all I'm going to say. If you really think it's that big a deal, put it in the box, man. What's in the box? What was in the box wasn't a playable game, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Well, Eric, thank you very much, by the way, for coming on.
Gentlemen, thank you. I am heading over to my Discord right now.
All right.
Catch you all later.
All right, Eric. And Rob, I want to say real quickly, thank you for coming on.
Okay.
And thank you for sharing, your wisdom on how helping out people. And again, congratulations on this. Because I mean,
can I say one thing? So
no, I was actually going to give you the last word. You have anything you want to say? Before we go.
First, the last thing is a story, but the first thing, I strongly believe if you want to give any niche of this hobby a leg up, whether a minority or just newcomers, whatever race, creed, or color they come in, support open content, because the more we share freely, the better off everybody's going to be.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And share tips on the logistics, because the logistics is so hard. And so, I think you'll find that most people, when you really dig down to it and you get beyond the rhetoric, the people that get ahead are those who do. Those who share the most are the ones who get ahead the most in both the hobby and the industry. So that's just, I wanted to say that. And that's why I share. Now, if you don't feel, I know I share more than what most people are comfortable with, but share what you're comfortable with. Don't feel like you have to share. Share what you're comfortable with.
Well, and also I think as a creator, once you get to a certain level of knowledge, it behooves you to pass that on as much as you can in a non-arrogant way to people who are willing to listen to you, because like I tell people all the time, one of the issues I have with people hating on 5e is that, yes, 5e is not my kind of game. I admit that, okay? But when I walk into a game shop and I see a table full of 10, 11, 12-year-olds playing 5e, D&D, and they're laughing and having fun, that's a table full of young kids who are going to grow up and they're going to have a love of tabletop gaming instead of putting a phone in their face.
Mm-hmm.
So it costs nothing to share what you know. And like you say, whatever's comfortable. But
yeah, and I even and when it came to 5e, I even wrote my own little supplement. I haven't published yet. I'm not sure whenever I'm going to publish, but I know what I'm doing with 5e.
Yeah.
I did it, but so now the game story, and Ray will appreciate this because he was involved,
Sure.
and so and this still remains the best single session of role playing that I ever had the pleasure of refereeing.
Hmm.
So it was back in the middle '80s. We're all in college. We're all fans of Star Trek, and I was running FASA Star Trek, and everybody was a
Yep.
member of a uh, Constellation class cruiser, the USS Challenger,
Hmm.
and um, and back then this was before even before TNG, and of course we were all passionate about Star Trek, only in a way you could be passionate about Star Trek in college.
Yeah.
So the campaign was fun with everybody. Had a full crew. We had a player who was a captain, and Ray was the science officer. So I ran an adventure. They were sent on a mission to this place where the USS Defiant disappeared. And for those of you who don't know Star Trek, there was an episode of TOS where this Constitution class starship disappeared
Yeah.
in an area of unstable space time, the USS Defiant, and the Enterprise dealt with it and so forth and so on. So the Federation decided they had to mark this space as dangerous. So they sent the Challenger there to do some navigational work, and they gave them an emergency warp booster in case the area destabilized and get it, boost them up temporarily to warp 9. Their max was normally warp 8 to get out of there. So they're doing this, and all of a sudden, a Klingon ship appears out of the unstable area, destabilizes everything, chaos rules, and they activated the warp drive, the emergency
Hmm.
warp drive, and they get out of there. And then they tried to contact Starfleet to let them know that a Klingon ship appeared, and nothing. And they investigated it, and they found that the whole subspace relay network was gone. Instead, they found far toward the Federation core another type of subspace uh, relay network using Andorian protocols. So they go and investigate that, and they found out there was no Federation. Instead, there was the Andorian Star Empire. There was the Klingon Empire and the Romulan,
Nice.
so the quadrant was now divided between the Andorian and and uh, um, and the Vulcans and the Klingons and the Romulans, and they went, well, what the hell happened to Earth? And they go to Earth, and they found it nuked to hell. And they
Oh.
and when they got to Earth, they were ambushed by the Klingons. They had a battle. So wait a minute, they beamed down a party to the ground to the Earth to investigate, and they were in orbit. They were ambushed by the Klingons coming out from around the moon. So they had a fight in space. They had a fight on the ground. So we had this two-pronged fight going on between Klingons on the ground, Klingons in space. And
Nice.
the PCs won, and they completed an investigation. And they found out that a nuclear war happened in 1962, and as far as they can determine, the Cuban Missile Crisis went up hot.
Oh, so they went basically the whole episode was an alternative reality.
Yes,
That's
and they
cool.
investigated the Klingon, and it turns out that this Klingon ship was from the original timeline, and they went back into time and they lobbed the nuclear missile at the U.S. fleet at the guarding Cuba, and that ignited the war, which devastated the Earth. And then they said, of course, the immediate answer was, "Hey, do we have Kirk's sunshot, that slingshot maneuver when they went back in the
Yeah.
time, saw that Saturn V launch?" And said, "Yes, it's on file. It requires authorization of the science officer and the first officer and the captain to authorize its use, but it's available." And then Ray said, "But wait a minute, is it logical to do this?" Because I think he was a Vulcan science officer. I said, "What do you mean? If we do this, we're wiping out everybody in this timeline." And everybody, how many people are living in this time? There's a trillions of people living in this timeline will be gone. Their lives will be gone. Do we have the right to do this? And, everybody in the room goes silent.
Yeah, by setting things right, what do you do?
And then So there was this one guy who played the security officer. Says, no, we have a right to our original timeline. And then Ray's, no, we got to consider the ramification. And then it's just for the next half hour, I think it may even gone for an hour, we had this debate that only college kids could have about the ethics of going back and restoring the timeline. And it got to the point where the captain character slumped back in his chair and he had tears running down his eyes. Guys, I don't know what to do. I have no answer for this. But they finally come to a resolution. They did the slingshot back. They figured out the Klingon and they ambushed the Klingon, had another fight, prevented them from nuking the fleet, restored the timeline, went forward back in the time, arrived back at Earth in the 23rd century, and everything went back. And that still to this day remains the best single session of RPG.
And you know what? I'm gonna mention Tim Kask here. Tim Kask one time sitting on his back porch was talking about theater of the mind and the magic of it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what you just said. People got emotional over a game because they were actively involved in the theater of the mind. They were role playing. And that's the magic of role playing and D&D. And I really am convinced that is why here we are 50 years later and we are still playing the game. We're
40 years later.
Well, but the point being is, D&D had its 50th.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, here we are all these decades later and D&D is still hot. It's still popular. It's there's people making stuff and doing and playing it. Why? Because theater of the mind. You can role play. You can become something. And I think
you get that group that's into whatever genre or setting.
Yes.
Treasure it because you can really, if you really play your cards right, do your job well as a referee, do your job well as a player, it can really elevate it to something that you're remembering 40 years later and get to share once again with your old friend who happened to hop in on the chat.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think with that, Rob, thank you very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations again. Everybody, Chris Moneymaker, Thyatis, Fugly, Tabletop Tap Room, Mark Hunt was in here tonight. Agile Monk was in here. Acro Ray, your friend's in here. The Zatron was in here. John D. Retired was in here. So, my wife was in here even. So for everybody in chat, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We appreciate you. Without you guys, we just don't come here. John Miller, again, he's in here tonight. Thank you for coming.
And everybody who said in the chat that they supported the Kickstarter, I really appreciate your support. They were really nice.
Yes. And, again, Rob, congratulations. I mean, come on, $2,000 goal and you crushed it. 38. I mean, that's just freaking amazing. And, I've known you only for a couple of years now. And I think, someone as passionate as you are, you really deserved it. I think you really, deserve this.
And I wish you the best of luck on Withered Towers game too, because you got to explain what that's about. Looked like you have bigger plans than I knew about.
Yeah, we'll have a discussion. I'll talk to you. Okay. But everybody, thank you again for tuning in tonight. If whatever channel you're on, hit that like and subscribe button. Please help us out. Helps grow our channels. Head over to Kickstarter and Rob. What do they want to search for?
If they want to search for my Kickstarter, Majestic Fantasy Realm, The Northern Marches, you'll find it. And if they want my blog, it's Bat in the Attic blog.
Bat in the Attic blog?
Yeah, Bat in the Attic.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I even outpoll the guys who actually make a living getting bats out of attics. So
great. Excellent. You took their URL. I love it. So everybody, again, thank you very much. This is Don, Steve, Rob Conley from Bat in the Attic Games. Thank you for tuning in tonight, guys. We'll be back next week. And you know what? Who knows what we're going to be talking about next week? You never know. Maybe Steve's marriage? No? You're not getting married?
No.
Gosh. I try to hook him up. He just won't. He just man. dedicated Linux and computers. So everybody, thank you again tuning in, and everybody, we'll see you guys next week, and do some gaming, have some fun. And by the way, happy 4th of July, everybody. Stay safe. Don't blow your freaking fingers off, people. Come on.
No, somebody already did that with a fireworks factory, and
Yeah.
the irony was it was in Yolo County. That had me laughing so hard.
Well, not real quick, not like our day. Guess what?
What?
Not even 5 houses down. We have a river.
Mm-hmm.
They were yanking a dead body out of the river today.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. So everybody, with that note, happy 4th of July.